The Detroit Lions over the last couple of years have been absolutely brilliant when it comes to player acquisition. And when it comes to this year, everybody's looking for them to win a Super Bowl. But there's this one player that everybody knows about, but damn, is he ever a cheat code who could make all the difference. We're going to talk about it, so stay tuned.
What are we? What makes us what we are and what we're going to be? It's grit. It's what we started with last year, guys. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and 3 toes. I will beat your ass.
Can definitely compete with the big dogs.
10, 5, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
You guys are unbelievable, man. I'm telling you.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello, Detroit Lions friends, fans, and family members. Welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike. And as always, we're diving on in. So folks, as we all know, when it comes to this upcoming season, there's simply one goal that all Lions fans have. It's not another division title. It's not a winning season. It's not playoff victories. All that ties into it. But the one thing that every single Lions fan wants is to get to a Super Bowl and ultimately win a Super Bowl. Doesn't matter if it's the first time or not. It's going to be a challenge because getting to a Super Bowl and winning a Super Bowl is always a challenge. That's why it's considered the ultimate, team championship in all of American sports because it's hard as hell to do. The nature of the sport, how it obviously takes to put together a roster, how everything needs to work together. It's hard as hell to win a Super Bowl. And us football fans know it. It's not a shock to anybody. That's why when you have teams that win multiple Super Bowls over the period of, 10 years or more, that's why those are called dynasties, because they are so hard to do and it's so rare to have those teams. That's why there's only one dynasty per each decade. The 70s, the Steelers. The 80s, the 80s were the 49ers. The 90s were the Cowboys. The 2000s and the 2010s were the Patriots back-to-back. And then the most recent one is the Chiefs. Now, when you're talking about the Lions, I know there are going to be people that say, you can't talk about a dynasty until you've won one. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you folks on that one. The point of the matter is that yeah, you have to win one in order to start that conversation. But at the same time, I can guarantee you this. Every dynasty that's ever existed, they were thinking about multiple Super Bowl wins before they got to their first one because it's just human nature. It's like, hey, we've got the chance to do something special. Maybe we can do something that is extraordinarily special, something that very few teams do. It's human nature to think ahead. So yeah, I get the logic behind the argument, but, that's one of those times where, for my logical brain, I don't adhere to it because it's like, listen, it just is not something that most humans adhere to. Now, the title of my show for today is The Detroit Lions' Brilliance over the NFL has given them an unbelievable cheat code. Now, what exactly am I talking about? Because, let me just call it for what it is. The Lions have several players that, through their brilliance over the last couple of years, they have acquired. And they have several players that I honestly think could kind of fall into this category of being a cheat code. But let's just call it for what it is. There are certain players that the Lions have where it's just like, dude, I don't care what you try to tell anybody. Just having them on a roster, it's simply unfair. Like, these are players that are so damn good that just simply having them already makes your roster 100% better. Now, in the Detroit Lions, which specific player am I talking about? The specific player I'm talking about is running back Jahmyr Gibbs. Now, why do I call the Detroit Lions brilliant in this case? In the fact that they were able to get one over on the NFL and have this unbelievable cheat code. Well, first and foremost, let's go back to the circumstances that surrounded us getting Jahmyr Gibbs. When we drafted him at pick number 12, It didn't last for very long, but there was about a good hour or so where there were people that were like, man, the Lions, they once again drafted a player that was too rich at a certain spot. They should have waited. Didn't take long for that whole notion to get dispelled absolutely quickly. And it further didn't take much longer for people to realize just how wrong of a notion that truly was. If you've ever watched Jahmyr Gibbs play football, which us Lions fans have had the great privilege of being able to do so over the last 2 years, you realize that this guy is a game wrecker. He is a game changer. He is a home run in a bottle. Because whenever that ball gets put into his hands, he can do something special with it, which is something that a lot of players cannot say they can do. But what is that? Why does that make that brilliant? Why does that make that a cheat code per se? Here's why. You guys all know that I went to college. I have a history degree. I love historical analysis. I love it to death. Most people think history is boring, dry, and dull because it's like, hey, it's a bunch of people that are dead anyway. What do we have to learn from them? Trust me, history has a funny way of repeating itself. And sometimes if you actually learn some of the things from it, you can get better results. That's kind of what I'm going to go with in this episode, kind of building upon the theme that I did in my last episode. When you talk about Jahmyr Gibbs is an electric, absolutely just dominating running back. The guy is just one of those types of players that as soon as you have him, there are so many things that become available that you are not going to have with another type of player. And I'm going to say this right now. I've heard this be used in the past, but the more I've thought about it, the more I've looked at it, the more I have seriously done my research on it, I'm truly actually kind of falling into this camp that I'm about to talk about. I look at Jahmyr Gibbs kind of like how the Lions used to have with Barry Sanders. Now, I'm going to make this very, very freaking clear. I am not comparing Jahmyr Gibbs' career thus far to what Barry Sanders did. That would be absolutely laughable. Barry Sanders played a Hall of Fame career. He's a Hall of Fame running back, one of the few running backs in NFL history that has over 2,000 yards rushing. I'm not comparing that. What I'm comparing and what I'm going to talk about here as far as an unbelievable cheat code is the talent that these two men had. One being Barry Sanders, who had it, and the other being Jahmyr Gibbs, who currently has it. Let me show you all something here. Let's take a look-see at what Barry Sanders' numbers were in rushing, receiving, and all-purpose yards, and compare that in the first 2 years that he played with the first 2 years that Gibbs has played. I guarantee you, you're going to get an eye-opening education. When we take a look at Barry Sanders' first 2 years he was with the Lions, he had the 5th most rushing attempts out of all running backs. He had the most rushing yards. He had the 3rd highest rush per average. He had the most rushing touchdowns. He also had a 5 touchdown percentage per rush. They obviously, up until I think it was like 1994 or something like that, they didn't take care of first downs and all that nonsense. So that data I couldn't find. But when you flip over from Barry Sanders' general stats in the first 2 years, which is rushing, and you go over to what Gibbs was able to do, you're going to notice something rather interesting. Gibbs has 100 less rushing attempts than Sanders did, but yet he's only got about 400 yards less. Yet he still has a higher average per rush than Barry Sanders did. And he's only got 1 less rushing touchdown, but yet he's got a whole percentage point higher in touchdown rush percentage. And then when you just take a look at the first downs and the first down per rush percentage, it's just like absolutely ridiculous. So what you're going to notice there is this. The fact that Jahmyr Gibbs is nowhere in most people's circles on the same conversation as, Barry Sanders, and rightfully so. But within the first 2 years of these two guys' careers with the same team, the same ball club, the Detroit Lions, there is an immense amount of statistical similarity in their rushing stats. The only major difference is that Gibbs has 100 less rushes, but only 400 less rushing yards. But yet he was rushing on average for 5.5 an average a pop. that would tell me right then and there he would need less than 100 rushes to get to where Barry Sanders was if we were to have that full-on comparison. That's one side of the coin of this argument. The second side of this argument is then the receiving component. Now, let's understand something. Barry Sanders was not known for being a receiving back. But what I found rather interesting is that, again, when you take a look at the first 2 years of both of these gentlemen's careers, you're going to notice a rather interesting similarity. Again, take a look at Barry Sanders. First 2 years he's with the Lions. He has 60 receptions for a little over 750 yards, 12.7 an average a catch with 3 receiving touchdowns. I thought that was actually pretty damn good considering the fact most of the time when people talk about Barry Sanders, they talk about him as a runner, not a receiver. Whereas with Gibbs, he's almost as renowned as he is for a receiving element as he is a rushing element. But yet again, take a look at the numbers. While Gibbs has over 50 more receptions, he only has about an extra, 70-something yards. And the average is a little bit lower as well. But the touchdowns are more. So it's kind of like a balancing out act between how, hey, you know what, Gibbs rushed for less substantially in terms of total attempts, but only a little bit less in terms of rushing yards and had a better rushing average. Whereas with Barry Sanders, I didn't think he was going to have as much receiving element to his game, but he actually, quite honestly, was a pretty damn good receiver. So when you take a look at all that, and then you take a look at the all-purpose yards between these two guys, it gets even more eerily similar. Take a look at Barry Sanders' all-purpose stats. Almost 600 touches for a little over 3,500 yards in his first 2 years, almost 6 an average a rush, 30 touchdowns between both receiving and rushing, with a 5 touchdown percentage over all of his touches. Now take a look at Jahmyr Gibbs. Jahmyr Gibbs has 60 or so less touches, but only is off by about 300 plus something yards. But yet, the same average per touch, one more touchdown overall, and almost a full percentage point better when it comes to touchdown percentage per touch. I mean, dude, I'm not a mathematician, but the numbers, the sheer statistical comparison between these two guys is very, very damn eerily similar. Now, that's one part of this conversation I'm going to have. But the other part we have to have about this conversation when we're talking about the Lions, Super Bowl, having this cheat code, the whole 9 yards, is you have to talk about the quarterbacks. Because I'm going to say this right now. When it comes to the conversation about Barry Sanders, everybody says the exact same damn thing about Barry Sanders. If Barry Sanders had actually had a decently reliable, consistent quarterback, the Lions would have won at least one Super Bowl with Barry Sanders. But as we all know, the Lions did not have anything close to consistent or reliable when it came to the quarterback play in the 1990s. It just was not there. Whereas when you talk about Gibbs, he's got about the most closest thing you could possibly have for consistent, reliable quarterback play. He has Jared Goff. And that's within his first 2 years in the NFL. Who did Barry Sanders have as his primary quarterback in the first 2 years he was in the NFL? Oh, that's right. Rodney Peete. I already know there are some Lions fans that don't have exactly very warm, fuzzy feelings when it comes to Rodney Peete's name. But let me just show you all the comparison here about how this is going to really start shaking down. Take a look at Rodney Peete's numbers as I put them up on the screen. Even for back in the 1990s, they're pretty damn bad. He had 1 touchdown more than 1 interception, had barely over a 70 passer rating, didn't even have 3,500 passing yards, and his completion percentage was only over 50%. That ain't good. Now, I know Jared Goff is going to be one of those pieces of this argument a lot of people are going to have some scrutiny over, but again, when you take a look at Goff's numbers, Goff is almost completing 70% of his passes, has completed over 9,000 passing yards in 2 years with Jahmyr Gibbs, has freaking almost 70 passing touchdowns when Rodney Peete didn't even have 20, and he has a 104 passer rating. Vastly, vastly different number comparison. Now, obviously, I know that that's going to come with the territory because there are things to consider here. Number one, Jared Goff plays in an era where it's easier for wide receivers to get open and the quarterback's more protected. Goff plays in an era where it's pass happy, whereas when Rodney Peete was playing, it was a little bit more balanced. Goff also plays in a league where there is more turnover from year to year due to further implementation of the salary cap. Because think about it, back in the 1990s, the salary cap was really just starting to pick up, and there wasn't as much roster turnover from year to year as there is now. Furthermore, Goff is, I'm just going to put this out there, he's substantially more durable than Rodney Peete ever was, and substantially more better than Rodney Peete could ever dream of being. And then finally, again, Goff has a better supporting cast in terms of talent. He has better coaches around him. And on top of that, he's got a more invested organizational leadership than what Rodney Peete had in the rest of the Lions from the 90s. But some are going to try and say, well, David, that's all fine, great, grand, and glorious, but you're not exactly comparing apples to apples here. You're like trying to compare an apple to a rock. And it's like, okay, I understand that. The only reason why I put Rodney Peete in there was because he was the primary quarterback in the first 2 years when Barry Sanders was playing. So I was like, okay, here. To make this a little bit more fair of a comparison, so to speak, let's compare the best statistical quarterback that Barry Sanders had, because I don't know if I'd call him the best one he had, but he was at least the best statistical one, versus Jahmyr Gibbs and Jared Goff with Jared Goff's best statistical season. So, who was the best statistical quarterback that Barry Sanders had while he was playing here in Detroit? As much as I don't want to bring it up, as much as some people would probably like to forget the name, it was Scott Mitchell in 1995. In 1995, Scott Mitchell had a pretty damn good year. He was 11th in completion percentage that year. He was 2nd in passing yards, tied 5th in pass average per throw, 3rd in passing touchdowns, 3rd in pass touchdown percentage per throw, and he was ranked 6th in passer rating. Say what you want about Scott Mitchell, but in 1995, he was one of the best quarterbacks in the league that year. Not saying that he was a great quarterback, but for 1 year, he had a really wow factor. Whereas with Jared Goff, who's been doing it year after year after year, how did Jared Goff do last year in 2024? Oh, that's right. Goff was 2nd in completion percentage, 2nd in passing yards, 2nd in pass average per throw, 4th in passing touchdowns, 3rd in pass touchdown percentage, and 2nd in passer rating. He was also 6th in QBR, but QBR didn't get started up until like the early 2010s, so I didn't figure that was an argument worth bringing in because Scott Mitchell didn't even know what QBR meant back in those days. But again, as I showed up on the screen just there, it's the net gain percentage difference that is the true indicator here. Jared Goff outperformed Scott Mitchell by throwing less pass attempts overall, but still outperformed him by the tune of 102.5%. That's a massive difference, folks. When you're getting a quarterback, even when Scott Mitchell was playing as a top, I'll just say it for lack of a better word because the rankings are right there, a top 5 quarterback in the 1990s, at least for the 95 season, and you have a quarterback in Jared Goff who's outperforming him to the tune of 102.5%, that's a red flag that you got to pay attention to. You can't just, completely dismiss it and say, oh, well, that doesn't matter for nothing. Bull crap, it matters. Because here's the next point I got to bring up here. Why I make these comparisons is that, again, like I said earlier, everybody knows without a shadow of a doubt that if Sanders had at least a better, more consistent quarterback, he likely would have won a Super Bowl in the 1990s. But Barry Sanders had the great misfortune of just not having really any good quarterbacks. The only quarterback that was of actual decent mention in the 1990s was actually Eric Kramer, which really, Barry Sanders only got teamed up with one time. Even though the Lions had him for 91, 92, and 93, other than that 1991 season, the Lions really didn't use him. And then think about this. This is the truly, absolutely head-scratching part of this. Even though we had him for 3 full years, in 94 he goes to the Bears, and Eric Kramer actually has his best football while he's with the Bears. In fact, if I think about it, I think Eric Kramer is still their all-time passing, passing leader for most passing yards in a season. And this is going back to the 90s. So for me, it's like, okay, here. If Eric Kramer was the best quarterback that Barry Sanders had, that right there ought to tell you something about just the sheer lack of consistency that Barry had. And if he had just had something like that at the quarterback position, how much different this conversation would be. And that's my whole point, is that had Sanders had that consistency and that better quarterback play, the Lions could have, in my honest opinion, at least won one Super Bowl in the 1990s. Obviously, we know that didn't happen. But with Jahmyr Gibbs, to kind of tie this back into this conversation of the current moment, Gibbs has not only got the chance for himself and others like Goff, St. Brown, Campbell, and the rest of the others that are there, but he also has a chance for the Lions as a total organization in the fan base to finally get that Super Bowl victory. And I kind of find it interesting how things kind of come around full circle. Because think about it. I'm going to say this. The Lions today are, at least in my opinion, they are much more talented overall than the Lions teams in the 1990s. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that, again, while I'm not trying to compare Gibbs's career potential to what Sanders has already done, the current talent that he has, I believe, mimics what Sanders had. And I also think that with Gibbs having the benefit of many more pieces, both on offense and defense, the organization, the coaching staff, that is going to give the Lions a significantly higher ability to win a Super Bowl. Because consider if you were, and again, I hate these what-if situations sometimes, but this is a what-if situation that you really have to think about and wonder. Consider if Barry Sanders was in Jahmyr Gibbs' shoes right now, like if Barry Sanders was playing, and you put him on the current Lions team that we had, Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Sam Laporta, that offensive line, the coaching staff, the organization. I mean, dude, at that point then, if everybody knew exactly what they did about Barry Sanders in this same exact moment, there would be almost nobody who would not want to say the Lions were going to be a guaranteed Super Bowl contender or a guaranteed Super Bowl winner. Why? Because again, when you take a look at most of the teams that Barry Sanders had in the 90s, all those guys I just mentioned, Goff was better than any quarterback the Lions had in the 90s. Not even a second thought. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I would say Herman Moore was pretty similar to him, but Amon-Ra St. Brown does things that Herman Moore couldn't do. J-Mo's better than Johnny Morton. I know some people are going to disagree with me, but it's like, listen, Jameson Williams is a burner. And this is a guy that literally led the league in catching average per catch, and he only caught the ball, 58 times? Sam Laporta is better than any tight end that the Lions had in the 1990s. Frank Ragnow is better than any center that the Lions had in the 90s. And Penei Sewell is better than any right tackle that the Lions had in the 90s. The only area where I can honestly think that there was a 1990s player better than anything that we've currently got right now was probably Lomas Brown at left tackle. And I'm not saying anything bad about Taylor Decker, but Lomas Brown was a beast. I've actually met the man in real life. He be a beast. And I can only imagine what he was like when he was actually playing, not what he looks like now when he's retired. So for me, the Lions having a running back in Jahmyr Gibbs that's very similar in how he plays the position, but actually adds more to it than what Barry was able to do, is more than just mere coincidence in my opinion. And again, I hate saying these what ifs, but it's the truth. If you could imagine the what if scenario, if Goff and Sanders and all the rest of them were paired together, along with this front office, which is sincerely invested in the team's success, and you have a coaching staff that's the same as well, and everything is substantially more improved than what Sanders ever had during his actual playing career, I mean, dude, how could you not think that the Lions couldn't make it to a Super Bowl? And not to even forget about this, dude, think about this. When Barry Sanders was with the Detroit Lions in the 1990s, he was the one singular Lions home run weapon. The Lions have got more than one here now. But with Barry Sanders, he was it. It's like, hey, hand it off to Barry and let him see what he can do. Well, here's the thing. Barry Sanders didn't even have an understudy that was worth mentioning back in those days. At least Gibbs has got one. David Montgomery is a great number 2 running back who can easily add another 1,000 yards to an offense just by his lonesome. Barry Sanders was never afforded that luxury. And now I will say this. Had Barry Sanders been afforded that luxury, obviously we would never have had Barry Sanders getting a 2,000-yard season and making NFL history. But I'm just simply saying this. All of the things that the Lions currently have right now, while also paired with Gibbs, St. Brown, Goff, J-Mo, Laporta, and the rest of them, all of that together is just a damn cheat code freaking tackled on top of an individual cheat code. When you've got a player like Gibbs, and then you've got all these other players added into it, it's like, dude, it's like playing Madden back on the old 2000 series on the PlayStation 2, and you had all those cheat codes that you could freaking buy the little cheat cards and then put them into the game, and it's like, dude, you couldn't lose. It's the same thing here. And for me, it's like, hey, if Barry Sanders by his lonesome was able to pretty much get the Lions to the NFC Conference Championship game in 1991, Gibbs has an immense amount more of talent surrounding him on this roster. He has a better coaching staff. He has a much significantly better front office. That's why I'm saying what I'm saying. The Lions have this cheat code that they have built up over the last couple of years by completely outsmarting and outmaneuvering the rest of the NFL. And it's just been absolutely brilliant to watch. But unless you actually focus on it, you kind of get lost in all the other nonsense that's been going on, which everybody right now has been talking about the damn defense and the edge rushing position. It's like, listen, I'm confident that the Lions are going to fix that problem. I'm confident they're going to address it in the draft. But if you actually step back and take the damn horse blinders off for that one particular position for just a damn second, you would realize that the Lions have a Super Bowl team that has the capability right now to get to a Super Bowl. Anything else that they add really at this point is just adding cherries on top. The Lions have already done all the rest of the work. Now they're just looking to add a little bit more flavor, a little bit more pizzazz to their already very impressive, very brilliantly built roster, which again, as I state, it's a damn cheat code. I mean, you take a look at the Lions roster top to bottom, you're going to be hard-pressed to find a roster that is more well-built. Top to bottom, starting level talent, depth level talent, rotational talent. The Lions have everything they need. All they really still need, which everybody and their brother wants to talk about, except for me because I'm tired of being Honolulu blue in the face over it, is the opposite edge rusher of Hutch, which again, once the draft hits, I have no doubt in my mind that that problem's going to get fixed. So I'm not going to fret it, and neither should you. But anyway, I'm going to end this conversation because I think I've done my job in presenting the evidence, presenting the facts, and the research. So having said that, I'm going to say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all to watch the next episode. Also encourage y'all to do one of these three things: like, comment, and subscribe. If by chance you subscribed in the past and you forgot to do so at the time, I want to highly encourage y'all, please make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that you guys never miss any more content I'm pushing out. Also want to encourage y'all to share the content so that way you guys can help continue to spread and grow the channel. And with that, I hope everybody got something out of the content that they truly enjoyed. Also hope it gave you guys something new to think about. That's what I truly try to do with every episode, whether it's the first time you're watching me or you guys have been watching me since the very beginning. And I hope everybody's got something in their life that makes them happy, makes them smile. God bless, my friends. And until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.